I'm Ian Walsh with Masters of the Market and Hard Money Bankers. Is what I do as a lender, construction and acquisition financing. And I really wanted to bring somebody who concentrates their business on something that's very, very important inside of the Philadelphia area and surrounding. And I brought somebody with a lot of experience in doing what he does. His name is Todd Baritz. Many people probably already know that last name. You probably have dealt with him in some capacity, as his family practice does a ton of tenant and landlord services in the court system. So what I wanted to, well, first of all, hi Todd, how are you?
Hi Ian, how you doing?
Good, man, good. So I have a lot of history with Todd, I know him pretty well, so it's not too far off from this conversation. I felt it was a lot of information that people could be delivered, and that adds a lot of value. And what I wanted to jump right into with you, Todd, is, you guys have been in the game for so long, you and your family and your father and your brother and so forth, and seen so much. But I wanted to start back in for like 2008. And if you guys have seen the markets and working with so many large landlords, small landlords, what have you guys seen since, the market downturn of 2008 until now, which has been in an upswing? What have you guys experienced in your business, and what can you say from your perspective in what you do?
So I would say that first and foremost, what we've seen the most is tenant representation. When I first got out of law school in 2002 and first started working in this firm, even on a part-time basis, landlords would come into court with attorneys and tenants would be unrepresented. I would say from 2007 onward, a lot more tenant attorneys surfaced. And almost every tenant that gets sued in landlord-tenant eviction court in Philadelphia will receive letters from 5 to 10 attorneys as soon as they receive their complaint, or even before, because the attorneys are getting lists from the court and they're sending out mailers to every tenant that is being sued in court. So I actually think that is a good thing. I would rather deal with a represented party than an unrepresented party. I think the emotion comes out of it, and you have an attorney, even if he's being very difficult, he's at least just doing his job, as opposed to a tenant who is unrepresented and they're looking at losing their housing. They're at a very emotional point in their life, and it's sometimes hard to be rational and make a rational decision as opposed to an emotional decision in court. That being said, when a tenant is represented, now we have a situation where the tenant's attorney is trying to make this case the best way it could for the tenant, as opposed to maybe reaching the most amicable result. In addition to the tenant representation, the other issue that we really encounter is changes in laws in the city of Philadelphia. Most notably the Certificate of Rental Suitability Ordinance. And if you're not familiar with that, every single tenant that moves into a property after October 12th, 2011, needs to be provided a Certificate of Rental Suitability and a Partners for Good Housing handout. All of that can be obtained online. It's very easy to obtain those documents. However, your failure to provide a tenant with those documents means 2 things. 1, you can't collect rent, and 2, you can't obtain possession in court. Previously, it wasn't enforced. I don't think it actually became enforced until probably around 2013 or even 2014. But the act went into effect, as far as the city is concerned, on October 12th, 2011. So what we're getting is tenants are coming in, they're becoming knowledgeable of this ordinance, and you have a landlord who didn't provide this document to the tenant. And the tenant says, I never got their Certificate of Rental Suitability, I never got the Partners for Good Housing handout, and therefore I can stay in your property rent-free, I don't have to pay rent, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Sounds crazy.
It does.
However, that's the law, and that has been a problem. Landlord.
Extremely interesting. So if you don't have counsel and you're going to go to court, I recommend calling Todd, because half of that information nobody knew until right now, until they're going to see this video. And it's, working with you over the years, Todd, I mean, everything I've ever done in terms of real estate investing, it's always you call Todd Baritz, period, end of story. Because you've got to have people that I feel or counsel that is completely up to date with this stuff, knows what they're walking into, or else you get bulldozed in the court systems. I mean, I've seen it. In fact, I tried it one time without you, and you called me up and said, Ian, you're crazy going in there without counsel. And I said, lesson learned. I mean, that was it. So literally once, and there's been, tons and tons of cases that we've dealt with together. And that's really interesting that you say. So you're saying that your practice, you're appreciating the fact that you're seeing more attorney and more representation on the other side, because it basically streamlines the process for both sides in a more in a I want to say more professional capacity, but in a more workable capacity. Is that about right?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
you have an attorney who is doing his job. I may not like the way he's doing it. He may be doing it incorrectly. But when you take the emotional aspect out of it, it makes it easier for me to do my job, for me to represent my clients, because I can basically say to an attorney, listen, this is what you're arguing. I understand what you're saying. It's not going to fly. It's not going to work in court. You know this. You've seen me. You've seen what I do. You've seen what the judge does.
Yep.
If I say that to a tenant, the tenant says, you're just being a crook. You're being a liar. You're trying to treat me. You're trying to trick me. So it makes it easier for me to represent my clients, because I now have someone who's not emotionally involved, who's simply doing a job and doing what they need to do, and we're moving the case forward.
I like it. So with that said, and what you've seen happening, which is really relevant, I know you've made me and the stuff we do on a day-to-day basis very aware of these new ordinances that are coming up. What are you guys in your family practice and what you do doing moving forward? As the market also has changed, right? We had a lot more landlords back in 2008. Now we have a lot more flippers because the market's on an upswing. How are you guys adapting or preparing to adapt to either, hey, the new president's in town or whatever you want to call? What are you guys doing to stay progressive and on top of where your business is going in terms of, your practice?
Well, we're educating our clients.
Okay.
We now bring up this certificate of rental suitability ordinance at hello. So when a case comes in, particularly with a new client, we ask the question, did you provide? And if you didn't provide it, we tell you how to get it, how to provide it to your tenant, and explain how important it is. Where it becomes an issue is you have a lot of landlords who have been have been landlords a lot longer than I've been practicing law, and they are unfamiliar with this ordinance and their responsibility and other responsibilities of landlords. They don't want to hear from someone that I have someone living in my property and now I can't collect rent. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. It's not a very good law, but nonetheless, it's in effect. We can't change it. Some of the interest groups, the landlord interest groups, have attempted to, and basically made an agreement with the city that would permit enforcement of this after October 12th, 2011. It's not hard to get. It's not a hard thing to do. The problem is being able to stomach the situation when you didn't obtain it.
Sure.
And our job is to educate the clients and make sure they know what to do and what happens if you don't. I used to take the position that we can make arguments why that ordinance is not enforceable. I don't believe that anymore. I mean, it's an ordinance. It's on the books. The Court of Common Pleas has ruled that it's enforceable in several court cases at this point, and we have to tell our clients that they have to get their licenses. They have to do what they need to do to be proper landlords. And as far as the process has not really changed. Municipal court is very similar as it always was, going back to 2002. There's just some more requirements that landlords need to do in order to properly collect rent and properly obtain possession when a tenant's not complying with the terms of the lease.
Okay, I get it, and that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad that hopefully anybody watching this, I get this from time to time. People want to go down and file their own cases. I see it all the time, and just seeing what I've seen with you over the years, I think people are absolutely crazy not to spend a couple bucks, on counsel to know that they're going to go in there with the best representation, the best shot they have, rather than. It's just, especially the Philadelphia court system. I mean, that is a polished court system. You've got to know what you're doing down there. It's something that I always strongly recommend to anybody talking to me that, I actually did a whole video blog on, pay for counsel. It's worth it. It always is. You pay, people talk about different services you pay for, and I can do this myself and I can DIY this. Not an attorney, not when you're dealing with a lawsuit. You have to deal with the ugly reality of, hey, I'm looking at an eviction. It's not a pretty thing. Nobody's there because they want to be, but we're dealing with a situation that, can I potentially retain or save some of this money or am I going to get in there and, have somebody, worst case scenario, somebody lives there for the next 6 months rent free in a situation that you're losing 4 or 5 times the amount of money it would have cost you to hire your services. So this isn't really a promotional thing just for Todd, but I'm such an advocate of his services that I guess it kind of is, because it's who you need to use in this city and your local. So if you have, so let's leave it with a tip for, if you're a new landlord, right? You're just getting in the game. And I'm faced with the ugly situation. Somebody's not paying rent. We're not seeing eye to eye. What would you advise them to do? Or what would be the best step they could take to mitigate loss in terms of, hey, we're going to court. This is now what's happening. It's a reality. What's next?
Well, I think the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your lease and see exactly what that lease requires you to do in the event that the tenant has defaulted.
Okay.
There's going to be a notice provision in that lease. Well, how much time do you need to give before you file a landlord-tenant complaint? Do you send a late notice on the 5th day of the month? If rent is due on the 1st and late by the 5th, on the 6th day of the month, a late notice should go out. After that time period, you need to send a notice to quit. And that's all going to be governed by exactly what's in your lease. But my rule of thumb, and Ian, we've spoken about this over and over and over again, is that if you've waited to the 5th day of the 2nd month to send this thing to court, you've waited too long.
Yeah.
Reason being, you're not going to get a hearing date until 21 to 30 days from when you file. And then all things being equal, if the process moves as smoothly as it possibly could, you're not going to get an eviction date until 30 days from that court date. So you're looking at a 60 to 65 day turnaround from the date you file to the date of the lockout. If you wait longer than the 5th day of the 2nd month, you really are pushing this thing out. You might have a tenant in your property who you've done everything as fast as you possibly could and not get them out until they're 4 months behind in the rent. I have some clients that go sooner. Their lease requires a certain amount of time period. As soon as that time period is up, they are filing immediately. That's mostly large apartment complexes where they set the tone that you cannot be late on your rent. If you're late on your rent, we're going to file the action. We're going to proceed in court. And really, most of those tenants end up getting it caught up before the eviction. But they know that if they default in the rent, they're going to be going to court. So setting the tone for your tenants that you're not going to tolerate non-payment of rent or other types of breaches is really what you need to do. I mean, I would tell any landlord starting out, the most important thing is setting the standards, is setting the tone for, you can't pay your rent on the 15th of each month. It doesn't matter if that's when you get paid. Your lease says it's due on the 1st. That's when it should be paid. If it's not paid within the grace period, you're going to get a late fee, and we're going to enforce a late fee. If you don't pay your rent, you're going to go to eviction court. And if you go to eviction court, you may get a judgment against you, which is going to make it very difficult for you to get housing in the future. So for landlords, that's what I would say. For landlords, make sure you set the tone for exactly what's going to happen. That you have a contract. The contract says you need to pay the rent on time, and we're not the type of landlords that are going to let you string us out and pay every 3 months, but then stop paying for a few months every now and then. We're not going to allow that to happen.
So it's interesting you say that. Todd and I came into working together through property management company I used to own, and I remember him telling me that years ago. You said we've hashed this over, we talked about it. So that became the process by which we manage properties, because that was the advice we were given. And to this day, I think that is one of the best pieces of advice from a landlord's perspective that you can give. Is you have a lease, you've signed a document. If you don't enforce what you've signed or you don't stay to it, it's almost not fair to the tenant side, because then they really don't know what to expect. Like, they don't know to understand, is that contract really worth anything? And then you get mad at them, they get mad at you. They really weren't, they didn't have a template or a box to work within, so they don't really know what they're doing, which isn't fair to them from the landlord's perspective. And then you get mad at them. So it creates a lot of chaos and a lot of gray area. Whereas if you just did exactly what you said, you stick to the rules, you stick to the guns. If you're filing an eviction on the 16th day or whatever the day your lease says, you call Todd, you get it done. That's what you do. And it actually creates a better relationship between the landlord, we found, between the landlord and the tenant, which most people would think that, hey, I got to file eviction really fast. The tenant's not going to like that. No, you state exactly what your lease says, and it creates a consistent platform for everybody, both the tenant and landlord, to work off of. So really good piece of advice for any new landlords. I've seen it work time and time again. So Todd, I really appreciate you coming on today. Your time is valuable. And but if I'm a new landlord, or I'm somebody trying to reach out to your practice, how do I get in contact with you guys? Do you have a website? Do you have a phone number? How would I reach out to you?
We do. You can reach us. And first of all, Ian, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to do this again. Answer any questions that you or your clients may have. I enjoy doing this, and I want everybody to be knowledgeable. It makes my job easier. It makes your life easier.
Sure.
So, I'm available for this. To reach us, we have a website, www.baritzlaw.com. That's BARITZLAW.com. And our phone number is 215-557-8608. If anybody would want to get in touch with me individually, Baritz, TBARITZ @baritzlaw.com.
Perfect. Yeah, and I can say from personal recommendation, and I still do it to this day. There's no question. The person to use for your services in the city is it's Todd Baritz. So, and I'm not like I have no vested interest in that comment other than when we're using your services, the delivery is flawless. So. I'd recommend anybody to it. And as you guys know, we'll wrap this up. Ian Walsh with Hard Money Bankers, or Ian at hardmoneybankers.com. Find me on Facebook, Hard Money Bankers PA. And again, Todd, thank you. And looking forward to releasing this at the beginning of the new year.
Thank you very much. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
All right, take care.